Good morning, YCC. I hope you're really well. I am joining you from a really cold music room. And I want to talk a bit today about culture and connection and small groups and how small groups can really help us in that. And what I want to start with is looking at weird culture. And weird culture is this acronym that some psychologists use to define our culture. Not all encompassing, but sort of some good ground level base points and sort of helps us understand the culture that we live in. So, I've got my lovely prop. This is weird culture. And so you can see here that the acronym stands for Western, Educated, Industrialised, Rich and Democratic. And I've highlighted these three because I want to focus on them in a second. But these are kind of like 5 things that people have decided are sort of almost pillars of our culture. And I want to look at how these middle 3 affect our ability to connect with others. And I'm going to start with educated. So when we're educated, and education's a brilliant thing. I love education. Like, absolutely all of these things are good things inherently. But with education, we might feel that sometimes we only want to speak to people on our level of education, or possibly we might not agree with people who don't think like us in an educated way, or we just might lose a bit of perspective and actually fail to connect with other people. And also, if you're getting educated, if you're in education like I am at the moment, you will find that you don't spend a whole lot of time with other people when you're studying. A lot of stuff alone, and actually you have to break out of that. So that's educated, and actually I think it's really important to see that and see the need to connect in that. With industrialised, I think with the sort of industrialisation of our day, we may simply feel the need to be busy and to be hurried and to be quick and like progressive and productive and all the P's and just keep going, and actually fail to stop and fail to be present with the people that we're around. And I just almost want to offer a sort of challenge to that. Just let us allow ourselves to stop and connect with those who we are around and be present with those who we are around, and stop our minds worrying, because I know mine does all the time when I'm trying to be present with people, because we live in a world that demands so much of us as machines of productivity. So, with rich, it's kind of related to the last point. We might feel that we're striving for more, which can lead us to sort of step over each other and possibly fail to see the value in other people. And this leads us to shame, and it leads us to disconnection. And it's not a good thing to connect with others, to be pursuing something that is not a person or doesn't have a personality, to pursue something that is so dead as money. I could also talk about democratic. I'm not going to, because I don't want to get into that conversation now, and that would take me a very long time and probably upset a very large amount of people. So let's not do that. But obviously we can see how that does disconnect people, and how that does create division. I'd also like to reiterate that all these components of our culture are good in and of themselves. To be Western is not a bad thing, to be educated is not a bad thing, the others are not bad things, but it's the sort of glorification of these things, and it's the sort of where it goes too far. So, how do we combat this then? Well, Paul writes to the church in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18, and he's writing to this church in 1 Corinthians that is really divided I follow Apollos, I follow Cephas, I follow Paul. They're sort of divided amongst their leaders. They live in a culture where it's all about getting ahead and being competitive with each other and really fighting for sort of your way of life. And it's all this sort of gunk, I'm going to call it, that doesn't actually fall into line with connection and community. And in opposition to this, Paul writes this. He writes, "Do not deceive yourselves. If any of you think you are wise by the standards of this age, you should become fools so that you may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows that the thoughts of the wise are futile. So then, no more boasting about human leaders. All things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas, or world or life or death or the present or the future, all are yours. And you are of Christ, and Christ is of God." And I love that last line. You are of Christ, and Christ is of God. And just a reminder this morning that we are all one body of Christ, no matter how divided we are in the moment. And I just want to quickly touch on sort of small groups and how that comes into it. That actually, it's such a countercultural thing to be a part of a small group. It's just such a beautiful opportunity, I think, for me to be able to talk to people who might not have had my life experience, to be able to engage in conversation and get a different perspective on the world and on faith and on life and on what this whole message that Jesus is giving means. And actually that is completely invaluable, these sorts of discussions, to my faith and to keeping myself humble. And that's why I'd say it's so valuable for us to be part of community and us to be part of a small group in this church, or if you're not from this church, in another church. But please integrate yourself in community and think on how you can do that this morning. Thank you for your time, and I will see some of you really soon. Cheers.